Welcome to r/NuclearRevenge. It's a place for all forms of extreme revenge. Thank you guys for subscribing, likes, and supporting in the comments. The first story, the client did not want to pay for the work, then see you in court. The second story, I quit a job because I couldn't work overtime and subsequently got the call center shuttered. On to the first story. Hellish client gets what's coming to him. Hey all, so I'm a freelance web developer. Had a guy contact me saying there was a small project he needed help with, stating it should take minutes and wanted to pay $50. Fair enough. He also states that he needs it done by the end of the day, since he's apparently in a tight spot with his employer, so he needs it done fast. Also fair enough. I'm not going to turn it down just because it's a tight deadline. I get in and find out his previous developer was very sloppy, and the code was near impossible to read. His site is in Squarespace, and a lot of second-rate developers work there, which is fair because it's pretty easy. I tell the client this code is horrible and I need to reformat. Then it turns out the new links that he wanted in there completely broke everything. I told him that it would likely take about 6 hours to get all this sorted out, and he said that was fine and would compensate me accordingly by my hourly rate of $80 an hour. So I finish everything up, tell him the total of $640 and he agrees. Says he can pay me the next day. This "I'll pay you the next day" BS goes on for about 2 weeks, and I try to call him again on the most recent day that he said he'd pay me. Turns out he's now blocked my number. A couple days go by of trying to contact him while still getting nothing. I went to log into the site to cut my losses and delete my work. Turns out he's changed the password. At this point it's clear to me this was planned, so I'm peeved. I email him stating that if I don't hear anything within 48 hours, I'll be serving him court papers and demand of payment to his address that I had to find through an ancestry site and subsequently call his apartment complex to confirm before I serve some poor sap with random court papers. He does an email for 24 hours, and this morning I find out that I'm still logged into his site through the Squarespace app. Clearly this is a huge vulnerability in Squarespace since he had changed his password and I was still in on the app. I'll likely report this to them. This is when my revenge comes into play. I created a new email that was his address at protonmail.com, which I then used to sign up for a new Squarespace account with, invite myself a contributor so I can access on desktop as well, and set his live site as password protected. He sees this and is repeatedly emailing and texting me, saying he can pay me $250, but $750, now with late fees, is just insane and way too much. Now apparently he can pay me on Monday, which I've heard plenty of already. This peeved me off even more, so I stated I would continue adding late fees until he pays up, and that his site will continue to be mine. Now his site is indeed live again, but every page autoplays SH SoundCloud rappers, and all the links he had me place now take the user to cool math games. I considered Pornhub, but perhaps that's a bit much. I've never done this to other clients, but this dude is a 43-year-old piece of garbage. I should also state that I pride myself in my work and generally run on a very professional level. However, I won't accept no payment and being D'd around for weeks. He decided that he once again only wanted to pay me $400 max, so here are our two most recent texts as of yesterday. Client: we need to agree on middle ground here. I'll do $400 total, but that's insane considering my guy, if he did not go MIA, does it for $50 to $75. Client: Monday $250, and when I get my checks I'll do $150 out of that. Me: before anything else, I need you to understand that what other people charge is 100% not my problem. I personally know devs that charge $5 an hour, and others that charge $1,000 an hour. People charge what they charge based on their work. You should also realize that you're saying the guy that charges you a lower rate went MIA. That being said, I also want to say I'm wildly disappointed in the behavior you've chosen to exhibit. I would never dare question someone's hourly rate unless they provided completely second-rate work that was entirely unusable. In fact, I had to fix your previous developer's second-rate work. I also would never dare tell someone tomorrow and next Monday, I swear, over and over again, nor would I then decide to question pricing almost 3 weeks later. I'm 22 and seem to understand these basic principles of respect better than you do. That's completely shameful, particularly for someone who's supposed to be a respected businessman. Even considering all this and all the frustration you've put me through, I'd be willing to compromise at $500 due to the late fees that I clearly stated you would need to pay. I did my best to be reasonable since I truthfully didn't want to go to court. I have plenty of headaches with other facets of my life already, so I'd rather not. I figured $500 would be enough to call it a day. Currently, as it stands with late fees and original price, he's looking at $800 flat. I sent that message yesterday at 8:26 p.m. He is still yet to reply, so I reached out to a lawyer I know through a group of car guys I used to wrench with. He said I should send a letter of demand payment by certified mail, signed by lawyer's name, with a request of proof of receipt. I think that's what it's called. Can't remember exactly what he called it. When I send the letter, I'm also supposed to email him explaining the current situation, in which he could be serving jail or prison time with fines. Again, I can't remember the exact numbers, but if the late fees get to a certain point, he could be looking at 2 years in prison and a fairly hefty fine to the state, with a felony charge for theft of services on his record. Woke up this morning to a $100 Venmo payment and a message stating, "Sorry, didn't see your message until today. Was in upstate New York all weekend. Can get you $250 more when my checks come in this week." My reply? "Thanks for the heads up. Expect to be served with a letter of demand payment tomorrow and a fun time in court for theft of services if you don't pay me in full by Friday." He's confirmed he's received the demand of payment letter, and I have a lawyer on retainer that's ready to pull the trigger on him tomorrow if I'm not paid by 5 p.m. CST. I've been D'd around some more after deciding to be somewhat merciful. Here's what has ensued today, after he informed me he would be paying the remaining balance today. Client: "I'm at bank now with my advisor. I'll let you know as soon as I'm back. I'm sorting out a bunch of SH. I got home late and went to bed. I have a busy day tomorrow too, and I have strep throat still, etc. I said I'd pay you more, just be patient. I'm also dealing with a court case and multiple serious issues." Me: "Alright, here's the deal. I understand going through things and facing problems, everyone does. My daughter was in the ER twice last week, and I've had plenty of issues since then and before then. You've had an entire month now to pay me, and quite frankly, I'm sick of waiting and having to chase you down for this. I expect to be paid in full by 5 o'clock p.m. CST. If you choose not to do so, I'll be contacting my lawyer, and I will be suing you for theft of services. This can include jail or potential prison time with added fees. I've been very merciful up to this point, but this is too far." Here's his reply about half an hour later. This guy is something else. "Dude, seriously? I'm with my lawyers sorting out something important. Do not threaten me again. I have not stolen anything. Frankly, I advertised a flat rate payment of $50 for the job. Read it. It's on Upwork, in black and white. It should have taken no more than 2 hours max, and I never agreed to $100 per hour or 7 hours of work. Please stop harassing me." Here's my reply to his most recent message. "Well, client's name, I have a family to feed and a business to run, so this is pretty high priority for me. You haven't stated any problem with paying $640. I don't want to hear another word unless you're telling me you're sending me your money right now." His reply: "I told you I'd pay $400, which is way more than I should be as a compromise. Next week I'll make another payment. I cannot this week now." This was about a week or two ago. Still haven't heard a word from him since then, with no such promised payment of $400. I've been speaking to a local lawyer and we're getting a battle plan ready. Preparing for trial, a-hole. The second story is, I got the call center shut down. When I was a freshman in college, I took my first job working for a large company doing contract work to a partially owned subsidiary in the mobile phone industry. It was the 90s, and the world of mobile phones was in its days of every local telco still being separate from the divestiture when they broke up Ma Bell. You had tons of available companies to choose from, instead of the big four and their MVNOs. Coverage maps looked like someone sneezed on them instead of the coverage you had now. There was no data, no text, and 100 voice minutes was enough for most anybody. It was the Wild West in telecom. The job paid well enough, and the hours allowed me to go to my classes. The job was fairly easy. We were tasked with activating new accounts. This required us to run credit checks and collect deposits when necessary. In the spring and summer, things were relatively calm. The only rule that really upset me was that we were not allowed to read anything outside the company intranet during downtime, and this meant I couldn't knock out coursework. No big. Come November, they wanted us to work more and more overtime to ramp up for the upcoming holiday season. This I could not do, as I was hanging on balancing a full course load in addition to working the requisite 40 hours. They instituted a demand for at least 10 hours overtime a week. We were a small part of the building as we took up less than half of one of the 4 floors, and were the only company there that was not a defense contractor. The contractors were all pretty cool, even if the MPs on floors 3 and 4 were a bit hard-aid, and they were nice to talk to on breaks. We had no room to expand. The office was also only open from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Because of the demand for overtime, they instituted desk sharing, but because they still didn't have enough desks, they couldn't seat everybody. I worked days, and they wanted me to stay until 1900. This meant that the person with whom I shared a desk that would normally start at 1300 had no place to sit, as they were also expected to work the overtime, that they would show up for 2 hours early and sit in the break room until I left. I couldn't understand why they would pay this guy 2 hours of base pay and 2 hours overtime to sit in the break room and twiddle their thumbs, but they determined that would be better than having me get out on time. Eventually, I had to tell them I was quitting, since I couldn't do the demanded overtime. I left and figured that was that. They called back 2 days after I left and asked if I would come back to work. I said I would, on the condition that I would not be expected to work the OT, and they said we would talk about it when I came back in. I show up and they pulled me aside and said that they still needed me to do the OT. I told them that it was impossible, and there was no point to having asked me back if I had to work it. We were at an impasse, so I quit for the second time within a week. The company started asking for more and more overtime of the remaining employees. A bunch of these folks had families, and it was to their delight that they were being offered hundreds of dollars in bonuses for breaking certain OT thresholds. Their kids would have the best Christmases of their lives. Cars were being paid off early, and down payments for mortgages were racking up. Come January, the overtime is gone, as there was no need for it. People are settling back into their former routines and payday arrives. From my friends that stayed working there, they said that the envelopes were opened and there were audible gasps coming from across the floor. Paychecks were being issued for $0 to a large number of employees. One got a paycheck for 15 cents. The shock quickly turns to anger and the floor erupts. Management came out and addressed everybody and told them that the bonuses they offered were not approved by the company and that the money had to be reclaimed. People were expected to work and collect checks for no money until the bonuses they were overpaid were paid back to the company, and that anybody that left would be sued by the company for the outstanding balance. They even told one guy that he was lucky enough to have a job there at all, since they normally only hired people with diplomas, and he was a dropout without a GED. A number of those employees were still friends and relayed all this to me. I had just started a new job working as third-party support for a portion of the company, to which I was previously contracted, and did night hours to coincide with my new classes. I asked if they minded if I referred some contacts to them, if it would get this resolved, and they said it was fine. I then spoke with a few people that I knew with the defense contractors, who were able to refer me to friends they had that worked with the IRS, since they would be very interested, what with it kicking off a new tax year. I explained to the IRS what happened, and provided them contact for my friends. 1 month later, after an investigation, the full force of the government came down upon the company. The IRS came in and demanded to speak with everybody that made the decision to withhold pay from employees to rescind the bonuses. It was eventually determined that everybody above a certain level was complicit in the scheme and would be held to account by being forced out and facing potential jail time. They were informed that closing it was fine, since the final stipulation was that all employees that were not involved in the scam would either be offered the chance to move to the office they had a county over, or would be offered very generous severance packages. The company opted to move the employees and shut the call center. Plea bargains were made. Everyone but the offenders went home happy. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more awesome stories.